When I was a child, I walked around with my hands stretched to my side. And in the front seat, I spread my fingers out when I learned to drive. Well, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. Yeah, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. When I was alone, I watched them slip as they sliced into my skin. At that hospital, where the blood poured over my arms and the light shined in. Well, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. Yeah, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. I was overjoyed at the hope that you'd walk in at a red light. All the days that I did not know if I'd make it through the night. How lucky am I to be alive, to love you. How lucky am I to be alive, to love you. Let me go back and tell me I'll survive, and say someday you will find me. Let me go back and tell me I'll survive, and to someday you will find me. Let me go back and tell me when I was a child. Let me go back and tell me when I was a child. Let me go back and tell me when I was a child. Let me go back and tell me I was overjoyed at the hope that you'd walk in at a red light. All the days that I did not know if I'd make it through the night. How lucky am I to be alive, to love you. How lucky am I to be alive.
Welcome to Adventures of the Known World, a Dungeons & Dragons campaign set in the world of Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules' Legendary Journeys. Think of this campaign as an improvised fan fiction in the Xenoverse, where fate is determined by dice rolls, and the heroes are what Xenites hate most about fan fictions, chock full of Mary Sues. Our story takes place during the 25 years that Xena and Gabrielle were presumed dead, when in fact they were just taking a cold nap in an icy tomb somewhere in a mountain. The world still cried out for a hero, and we'll see if these adventurers can help out in the warrior princess's absence. While you should not expect to see Xena and Gabrielle during this campaign due to Ice Nap, it will be riddled with familiar characters and lore from ancient Greece. D&D content featured in this campaign is a mix of homebrew as well as content from Wizards of the Coast and Arcadia, which is available on Kickstarter. Sound effects and music by Sirenscape, because epic games need epic sound, and special music featured by Hey King. As always, I'm Amanda, the Dungeon Master for this campaign, and with me for this special anniversary edition of Xena Warrior Princess, 25 years, we have Adrienne Wilkinson. Welcome.
Woohoo! Thank you for having me. It's the very first Dungeons and Dragons game I have ever been part of in any way, so this is like miraculous to me.
Yeah, it was a weird ask. I was like, but I have asked you a couple weird things in the past to do for me, so this is not completely out of the range.
I feel like I've learned to trust you. Just go with it. This is you may not have any idea what you're getting into, but it's going to be fun.
Thank you. So we're going to start off with something really special and really fun before we jump in with an interview with you to talk about Xena being the 25 years, and then going into just the process of acting and character development and your experiences with that, because with Dungeons and Dragons, that role play aspect, character development and improv, and it's pretty important, and you learn quite a bit. I've learned quite a bit about that process, and I just what you have to do on a daily basis for your career is just amazing and exhausting, and I'm just very excited to pick your brain. So
I'm excited too. Thank you.
So we will jump in. You are going to be playing the role of the Fates. In Greek mythology, there were 3 Fates that would weave a tapestry, and so we're going to have you do 3 dice rolls.
Okay.
And, I have you pulling up Google.
Here we go. I have my special 20-sided dice.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes. So the first roll we're going to be making is for the theme of the night. And so I have my encounter chart, and go ahead and give us a roll.
Okay, here we go. It's number 8.
Number 8. So the theme that our players will be playing tonight is a haunted house.
Ooh.
Which is great because you played Eve in a haunted house once.
I did. There were many cobwebs.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So then the second roll is going to be what kind of creature they're going to encounter in this haunted house.
Ooh, okay. Here we go. 13.
13. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
They're going to be facing the Furies.
Oh, I mean, I'm kind of a fan of that, but, good luck with them.
Didn't they cause, like, a chakram to be jammed into your head at one point, or Gabrielle's head because she tried to kill you?
Well, she tried to stab me in the back.
Yeah.
Then I think she tried to set me on fire. Then there was just a lot of things that were happening. It was just a whole bunch of drama.
All the Furies' fault, too. Oh, man.
Yes.
That's going to be terrifying. All right,
good
cool.
luck.
The last one is going to be a surprise appearance by a beloved, maybe, Xena character.
Okay, here we go. It is, 12.
12. It's Autolycus.
Ooh.
King of Thieves himself is going to be in a haunted house with the Furies. That is awesome. I've played Autolycus before, so that's less pressure for me. That's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there was a couple on here that I was really worried about, but we'll do that.
Ooh.
That's fine. I actually put Argo on the list because I was like, how hard is it to play a horse?
Oh, girl, if you did that, you'd have to go on Amazon and buy one of those horse heads.
Oh, man. I would too. That'd be awesome. All right. Well, thank you for those rolls. And we're going to be coming back to have that exclusive interview with you in not too long, just enough time for our characters to get into a little bit of trouble. And yeah, so we'll see you back here in approximately an hour or so, and then we will get to those questions. Thank you. Adrienne Wilkinson is back with us to answer a few questions about her role on Xena Warrior Princess and her processes as an actor. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for being interested. I'm excited to hear the questions.
First, we're going to start off with it's the 25th anniversary of Xena. How does it feel to be part of a show that has, after 25 years, is still being celebrated and enjoyed by so many?
Well, it's a two-sided answer. On one hand, of course, it's extraordinary and amazing, and we're all in awe of it still. The flip side is that we just all think, 25 years? Are you kidding me? Right? What? It really is that old adage of time flies, because it feels, I feel like it was 18 months ago that I did that show. It just is so fresh in my mind and fresh in my memories, and it's constantly in my thoughts. So it doesn't feel that distant. It really feels so close to me. So yeah, it's kind of shocking, but the fact that it lives on, the fact that there's an audience who's still interested in celebrating it is so extraordinary, and we're just really lucky.
Awesome. I met you for the first time at the 20th anniversary in Burbank. It was one of those awkward, hello, thank you for the autograph type interactions.
Sure.
But it was 5 years later, and you guys were supposed to have a convention this month that unfortunately was canceled. And but I understand there's a few ways that fans can engage with you, like one-on-one virtually, even for a good cause this month. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, that's so sweet of you to ask. Certainly. This year, when COVID happened and I was suddenly at home quarantining, I finally joined Cameo, and I also joined a service called Rave VIP. For those who don't know, Cameo is little video messages that you can buy for yourself or to send to other people. They could be anything from happy birthday messages to just a general pick-me-up or answering questions. It's just a fun, sweet way to interact, particularly when there aren't conventions. It's a way to have interaction with your favorite people. And there's oodles of people to choose from. You can just search my name in the search bars. Rave VIP is actually video chatting. So it's live video chatting. Again, it can be quick things like a hello, happy birthday message. Or if you are someone who's developing a script and wants feedback, if you are someone who is interested in acting and is really just looking for some information and wants to pick my brain, these are all things that are available because it's based on the amount of time that you want. So those are two things. The cool thing is that because it's the 25th anniversary, and because also this week was my birthday, I've decided that anything happening, any purchases this week, 100% of that, the proceeds will go to helping a family that's dealing with food insecurity. So it's, a terrible economy right now. It's really sort of a scary time. And I thought this would be a beautiful way for the fandom to not only have a good time, but make it for a great cause. So those are available. And you can also, if you're someone who's nervous about the videos, or maybe that's even something you've already done, but you'd still like to just participate in a good cause, my PayPal for this little venture is paypal@adriennewilkinson.com. Or if you go to my website, adriennewilkinson.com, there is a autograph section in the shop, and at the top of that page is a donate button. And truly, you can donate any amount. And this is a type of cause where every dollar counts, because it's everything from a gallon of milk to some paper towels. So truly, it's everything is helpful. So it's a way to just have a great time for a great cause.
Awesome. We'll definitely be donating on behalf of our Twitch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Being from Canada, we've had it a little bit easier, and we've just been watching all the struggles that have been happening down there, thinking, how can we help? And this is a good way. Like you said, a gallon of milk.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. If that is something that you need and can't have, suddenly having it is amazing. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for doing that, though.
Well, I would love to take all the credit, but let's be honest. One of the beautiful things about being part of Xena and part of the Xena fandom is just this extraordinary focus on the greater good. Mm-hmm. So this is not something that could happen if it wasn't for this fan base. I mean, it's not to say that I couldn't offer it, but to have people really interested in it because of the good cause that's really something special that exists within the Xena fandom. So it's something to celebrate, and just something that I'm so proud to be part of and really grateful for.
Yay. It's really true. The Z-Knights, they certainly know how to come together, that's for sure.
Mm.
All right. So we'll kind of stick on that Xena theme for a little while. In Dungeons and Dragons, when we're creating our characters, we look at something called character alignment. And it's a chart where your character might fall to something that is, let's say, they're a good person that follows the rules, or they're an evil person that follows evil rules. So there's like lawful good, evil good, chaotic neutral, all these different types of alignments. You saw a drastic alignment change in Eve and Livia. She went from what we would consider a lawful evil, somebody that was evil but followed her own set of rules and abided by them and expected society to abide by her rules. And then she went complete opposite, where she was following the word of Eli, and she was good, and she was trying to do good in the world. Did you know that you were going to have such a drastic change when you were reading for?
Not until that not until that third script arrived in my inbox did I have any clue that was even an option. I had been hired to play Livia, and I thought I would play Livia till the end of the series. It was simultaneously amazing because I also did not know that I was Xena's daughter until after I had been hired. They had kept that information very secret. But I had absolutely no idea and no way to anticipate that would happen. I mean, you know, those first 2 episodes that I did were entirely featuring Livia, and she was amazing. I mean, what a cool character. So to be at the end of that second episode thinking life is amazing, it's gonna, you know, this is such a fun character to play, and then to suddenly sort of be mourning the loss of her, which is not to say that I didn't find beauty in the redemption story, but you know, it's pretty clear on screen that playing Livia was much more fun than playing Eve. And you know, any show is a lot of work. The hours are intense. It's incredibly taxing and exhausting. But a show like Xena is doubly so, because most of it is outdoors. So you're in the weather, you're under the sun, and so much of it is physical. So that's even more exhausting. So to suddenly have less enthusiasm about and I certainly had enthusiasm for the show, but just having slightly less enthusiasm. I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous, but even just the wardrobe change was heartbreaking for a moment for me, because I went from this incredibly cool Roman cape and hat and gauntlet, just the whole thing. And I went to what looked like, you know, I had torn some Muslim off of a wall and wrapped it around me. You know, it was just such a very different experience, and it was still cool, but it wasn't that empowered place that Livia had that had been so delicious to play.
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned that before, and so my next question was going to be, is it easier to play a character that's personality is so out there and opposite of what you would be in real life, or is it easier to play someone that's more like you?
I think it depends. I think for me, one of the difficulties about switching is that when I was doing my part of creating the character, because of course the writers create it, the producers create it, the wardrobe creates it, but we all sort of have our piece in it. And what I had created for her was something that I had really worked on and loved. And then, you know, I got the script where I became Eve probably the day before we shot. And she felt like a stranger to me, which was one of the hard things. So it's not whether or not she was closer or farther away from me. It was more that I just hadn't had the time to really wrap my brain around what that difference was. And I was so longing to, because the truth is, the first episode of I think the first episode was Livia and the second episode was called Eve, maybe.
Yeah.
Of mine, I mean. But the first episode, I was amazed, but I was definitely overwhelmed. I mean, I was so jet lagged. Everything was brand new. My costume wasn't working. Pieces were falling off. The fighting was just something I was still sort of wrapping my brain around. So the first episode was so much fun, but it was also kind of stressful because I wasn't 100% sure if I had really gotten her. But the second episode, oh, I loved her so much.
I think that's my favorite.
Well, certainly mine. Just that fight scene, I felt so great. I knew how to do it. I knew I just really felt like, oh, this, it took me, I think back then every episode was shooting about 8 days. So by 8 days in, I mean, I knew her backwards and forwards, and I was so enjoying playing her, just really savoring it. So the loss of that was just something that it took me a minute to find my feet with again. So it's not even whether one was more or less difficult or more or less like me. It was more the shell shock of just not understanding, not having any anticipation that was happening.
We can definitely relate as Dungeons and Dragons players. We create our characters from scratch with some guidelines. We have the races and classes, and then we give them a personality and backstory. And then sometimes for years, we're playing these characters, and it's all improvised, but there's that little bit of growth. And then sometimes our characters die because we have little role battles, and we can't control how the roles turn out sometimes. And sometimes our characters die or something happens where we cannot play them anymore. And it's the most heartbreaking thing in the world. So I can imagine being so pumped up and being so into it, and then it's something's changed. No longer that character. There's a bit of a grieving process for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of grieving process, emotions are a big part of any character. And sometimes you have to play those emotionally intense scenes, and it can be difficult, especially if you've never experienced what your character is experiencing. So there's a lot of the thought process and stuff behind it. How do you prepare for scenes like that?
Ooh, it varies, because sometimes it's very easy because by some miracle, what the character is going through is mirroring something you're going through in your own life. So it's a much easier transition or blurred line. Mm-hmm. Other times it will be completely foreign to you. And you have to work on, in my opinion, it's either one of two things. It's either substitution, where what that character is going through has absolutely no bearing on your life, but you have to find something, you have to look for something in your life that has some through line to that other thing, so that you can find something that connects you to it just by substituting that idea. So, I mean, this is not an appropriate example, but it sort of gets the idea across that, maybe the character has just lost their parent, and you've never experienced that, but maybe 2 years ago you lost your dog, which was some difficult, very heartbreaking thing for you. And that sort of thing doesn't work with everybody, but it's an idea that your body and your emotions have been through that process. So you can sort of dig back and remember what your feelings were, and certainly find that empathy for something that is a totally different situation. If it's not that, then it has to be that you've built a really big not necessarily big, but a weighty, a intricate backstory for the character, so that if you know that you're staying true to whatever those rules are that you've built, then you kind of can't go wrong. So, with Livia, she was this character that had been brought up to be a weapon. So if they had suddenly given me a scene where she's sweet as pie and super generous and really gentle, it would have been strange. But of course, if it's the scene, you have to play the scene. So I would have to figure out how I could make that true to her. And in my mind, it would be that A, she's totally lying. B, she's manipulating someone, like there's some other thing that she's getting to. But it would be that I would have to figure out a way that would make sense for me to play those foreign emotions for that character. And sometimes they give you that on the page. I mean, sometimes that's explained to you and you've been given enough of backstory or information that you can sort of easily put those pieces together. But no matter what, it's about making it authentic to yourself. If you are not believing it yourself, nobody's going to believe it when they watch it. So it's just really laying the groundwork.
I've heard, I've never experienced this myself or coming close, but sometimes actors, if they've been playing a character that has such strong emotions for too long, they get something called emotional contagion, where they might start feeling that character's emotions and bringing it home with them when the production ends. Have you ever experienced something like that?
It's interesting. It sort of can't help but bleed into you to a degree. So you have to be really careful about how you process and how you take things in. Like I read an interview with Anthony Hopkins years ago where there was I think it was Meet Joe Black, where in the movie, I can't remember if he had a heart attack or a stroke, but he has some big medical event in the movie. And he told production, he went up to them and he said, make sure you're ready. Everything is ready. There's no technical snafus because I'm going to give this to you twice. I'm going to give you 2 takes and I'm never going to do it again, period. And he said, the reason is I'm protecting myself because my body doesn't know the difference. And I'm not going to do this for 8 hours for you because it would put my body at risk. It would put my mental health at risk. So I will do this. I'm committed to doing it. I'll do it brilliantly. But you got to be on your game because I'm only going to give you 2 takes. And I had such respect for that because, as an actor, your job is to deliver. But as an actor, your job is also to protect your instrument. And certainly with, like I'm not a method actor. I can't imagine living in that space because method means for the length of that character, you are living it 24 hours a day, whether you're on set or not. I could never do that. I'd lose my mind. Mostly because, because it's dramatic, because those characters, if it's on screen, it's because it's interesting. If it's interesting, it's because those characters are living big lives in some way. And if you're having to carry that emotion with you all the time, it's just got to be exhausting. And I respect the people that can do it, but for me, it just doesn't feel healthy. I definitely leave it all at work. When the cameras yell cut, I am back to me. And to me, that helps me just let it go, get it out of my body. But that's not to say that at some points it doesn't bleed in. Like it definitely just naturally does. I played a character once where she had a sort of superpower is the wrong word, but an extra sensory perception where on any reflective surface, she would see mirrored in it whatever the worst thing was that had ever happened reflected in that surface. So she walked through the world with blinders on because everywhere she looked was just terror. It's just constant, whether it's a mirror or whether it's a pane of glass or a car that's shiny or, anything that can have a reflection. She was just constantly being fed with these horrible images that had been reflected in some moment in time in that space. And I only played that character. It was a short film, so I only played that character for maybe 2 weeks or something. But by the end of it, I was so grateful to let her go because even though I wasn't living it 24 hours a day, it was still a lot of time that I was living in that space of being terrified. And I just remember hating that feeling so much because it sort of built up over time. And anyway, I can see that definitely happens for people. And certainly if you're playing someone who is sick or not, going through something terrible and you're doing it for months and months on a TV series or something, it would be very exhausting. And I think each person has to come up with solutions that they know help their own bodies and their own mental health to make sure that it's not something that affects their real life.
Totally, that's really good advice. A lot of people play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's something that happens quite a bit is they're so invested in their characters, and sometimes it does bleed through. I know
Yeah.
as a dungeon master, I'm a big fan of drawing those emotions out of my players, and I've made Bailey cry my wife so many times. I've killed her favorite NPCs,
Oh,
given her so much growth, so there's happy tears, sad tears, and for days she'll be feeling it afterwards, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. You turn that off.
ouch. Yeah, you are in dangerous territory, darling.
Yeah, whoops. So I'll get her to watch this and be like, you need to shut that off after, we're done playing. It's okay. You're fine.
Oh, but it is tricky, especially as you said, it's when you get invested that it becomes difficult.
Yeah, totally. Um, and so when we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, we're usually around a table and we're interacting with people face to face. Because of everything that's happening in the world with the pandemic, we've moved to doing online Zoom sessions. And even with this stream in particular, Adventures in the Known World, there's a few of us from different countries, so it's definitely Zoom based, which is fine. We're still getting to see each other's faces and get to play after each other. But you actually have some experience with voice acting, and I understand that you don't get the luxury of playing off of other actors a lot of the times.
True. I twice in my entire voiceover career have I had the luxury of recording with the other characters in the room. Most of the time, it's just too much to juggle. So what they do is they only bring you in to read your lines. Very rarely do they even allow you to hear what the other characters have done. So it's sort of in a vacuum. And there's the great part is that it can be very fast. The tricky part is that sometimes it's very unsatisfying because without those touchstones, I mean, you trust your engineer and your director, so you know they're getting what they need. But as the actor, it can be frustrating because it doesn't necessarily feel satisfying because you're not entirely convinced that the emotions played through correctly because you haven't heard the other pieces. And sometimes you're recording your part when the other pieces haven't even been recorded yet. So it's definitely tricky. And I think it's really, more than anything, it's an exercise in trust, trusting your own instrument and what you're able to bring, trusting your instincts. But honestly, more than anything else, because you're kind of blind, you really have to trust those that are in charge. So the director, just everybody that's contributing, you have to trust that they are not going to let you leave until they get what they need.
So you did a game recently, 2018, I believe it was, called Epic 7, and you got to do 3 characters, did the voices for, which is freaking cool. And I had a big fangirl moment because I'm such a gamer geek. One of my favorite D&D dungeon masters was also in that game with you, and I was like, man, I really wish they would just have all the voice actors in one room being able to play off each other, because then I would know that you got to play off of Matt Mercer. And
it would be fun. I mean, honestly, we would all love that. I think the tricky part is that whenever you're dealing with any kind of animation, the animation process is so slow that, they're often, these games are done over the course of a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're just sort of doing it chapter by chapter, bit by bit, or character by character. But trust me, we agree with you. We would love that. I mean, it would be really exciting for us to be able to have a more interactive experience. There's a lot of ways in which that would be more satisfying. It's just unfortunate that I don't think that's even possible just with the way that games are crafted.
Yeah. Next question is kind of moving into the audition process. How much information about a character are you given prior to going to an audition?
It depends. It definitely varies. Honestly, we used to get a lot more than we do now because with social media and other things, projects are having to be so much more confidential and careful about the details that they release. So sometimes even the material that you're auditioning with is not even the real material because they just don't want anything to leak out. But generally speaking, you just know the main parts. You know maybe a bit of the storyline, depending on the type of project. You know the main character traits of the project. In a voiceover project, they'll give you a description of a type of voice. They might even give you examples of specific characters from other projects or specific people that exist in the world that they're like, oh, in our mind, this character is like this person meets this person, or this character meets this character with a sprinkling of this person. So you kind of have a vague idea. But the beauty of acting is that, and sometimes this backfires, but the beauty of acting is that you're creating it. And no matter how specific they are with what they give you, you do what you do. And you certainly are trying to do what they want you to do. But I can't necessarily be such and such meets such and such. I can bring my version of it and it works or it doesn't work for what they need. And I have range and flexibility that we can work with, but I have limitations on what's just feasible for my voice box, et cetera, and so forth. So it's this combination, and it's the same with on-camera acting, where you don't want to go in mimicking someone else. That really never works. But you want to go in honoring what they are looking for, but doing it in your way. And sometimes what they want is so specific that you're just not going to be in the ballpark, and they maybe hoped you would have been, but you just simply aren't. And then other times the idea evolves because of the piece that you have added to it. So, just if nothing else for my own sanity, I just always say the roles that are meant for me are never going to miss me. And if I didn't get a certain role, that's because that role was not meant to be mine. It's not necessarily about exactly what happened in the room. It's about all the pieces that go to make that character, that production, those relationships in the room.
Awesome. So is there ever moments during an audition where they have you go off script and improvise and see how you do the character in that situation?
There definitely is, but it is also definitely rare. And the truth, at least in my experience, the truth is that the more time that goes by, the less that happens. And I think that's because most things, it's an industry that has changed vastly in 5 years. And the amount of self-taping that we are now doing, as opposed to going to a casting office and auditioning for them in the room, it's a completely different business now. I mean, 5 years ago, maybe you would get one audition a year that was a self-tape, and it's because that production company was in another state or something. But now I would say, well, in COVID, 100% of auditions are done by self-taping. But even before COVID, I would say 75, 80% of auditions were being done in self-tape. And it's just not possible to improvise when you're self-taping. It just doesn't make sense because it's not something they can really ask you to do ahead of time. And of course, also, they just don't want to be watching a bunch of garbage. So they send you exactly what they want.
This is what we need.
Exactly. They want to keep it short and sweet because they're getting hundreds of videos or thousands of videos or whatever. So it's definitely changed. And I'm sure, of course, there clearly are projects that are strictly improv, and you would be auditioning as improv with that. But for most dramatic things, and honestly, even most comedy that I've been up for, there's very little improv.
Good. It's structured.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So what, especially during COVID, I know a lot of us have a little bit more time on our hands and we're learning new skills or upgrading our skills. What are your favorite ways to improve upon your toolbox as an actor, or learn new things in your craft?
Ooh. I think one of the dangers of being an actor, is that when you are first jumping into this business, you are sort of labeled in certain ways. You are this character, you are this type of person. And the truth is, initially, you kind of want to be pigeonholed because you don't mind playing the same type of character 4 times if people are going to notice you, and then that gives you the freedom to be able to grow from there. But the other side of that, the problem is that there's so many things that you know you can do that you're not getting a chance to be able to audition for. So it's kind of this strange catch-22. But I think one of the important things to remember is that all of us evolve as we get older. So the characters, and I don't just mean, you know, like I used to play high school and now I can't do that. I mean, obviously, but I just mean the types of roles you can't, you know, other people are going to limit the idea of what you can play. And you certainly can't be somebody who's also doing that. So it needs to be that as you grow, you're very aware of who you are now, what it is that you represent, what it is you can do, what it is that used to be comfortable, used to be uncomfortable that now you love, or even what used to be comfortable that you're like, that's not really who I am anymore. You know, it's one of my very favorite acting games. I think it's so important. I wish everybody would do this. There's this exercise, and it ideally is done with complete strangers. But you take an acting class. On the very first day, everybody walks into the class and you tell them not to speak to each other. No one's allowed to talk to the other people. Then you have each person go up to the center of the room, and everybody writes down who they think that person is. What it is, what, just from looking at them, what it is that that person might be, what roles they could play, what that person's real life is like, et cetera, and so forth. And the value of this exercise is understanding that when you walk into a room, you are automatically bringing a story with you. Might not be right, but it's the way you're perceived. And it means that in some roles, you have to work so much harder because maybe you as a person feel like, oh, this role is perfect for me. It's exactly who I am. But it's not how you're naturally perceived. And you need to be aware of that. And vice versa, there can be things that you know you're right for. And honestly, one of the most valuable tools is there's certain roles that you're right for that you need to understand that your very presence does the work for you, that you don't have to try to be that person. You don't have to build a lot of extra on top of it. You have to understand that just you walking into the room could be that thing that they're looking for. And it's not about the magic thing. It's about just human perception and how we perceive each other. So it's a really valuable lesson.
I like that. That's a lot. Henry, excuse you. Sorry. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, but you're totally right. People can just say, okay, well, that's exactly just that, the way you're holding your body, the way your face is resting that day. Maybe it was an emotion you experienced early in the day. Maybe someone made you angry at the grocery store and you carried that with you, and apparently that's what they need. That's pretty huge.
And it's little details that you don't realize make such a difference. It could be the belt buckle you're wearing. It could be the way you styled your hair that day. It's all of these little things that are the signals to other people of who you are. And they might not be right, but it doesn't change the fact that they're existing. So they could be working against what you're trying to do or helping you in a way that means you don't have to work as hard. It's just really being aware. And honestly, you know, I say it as an acting exercise, but it's also something that kind of everybody in the world could use. Just being very aware of what you showcase as you walk into a room, what your level of confidence is, what your, you know, some people walk into the room and they just look pissed off. And maybe they aren't, maybe they're perfectly happy, but you definitely avoid those people. And so maybe that's a lesson that they should know. Or, you know, there's so many other fill in the blanks of what it could be, but I just think it's an important part about being human and understanding the way you present yourself. And I don't mean necessarily hair and makeup, and I don't mean that. I just mean naturally as a person. When you walk into a room, you are imbued with certain characteristics, some of which you might be totally aware of, others you might be clueless about. So it's a very interesting exercise to understand how other people see you.
So now my curiosity is piqued, and it's okay if you don't want to answer, but are you able to share with us maybe something that someone told you that you were in those situations, where how you came off?
Sure. I mean, the last time I did this exercise was more than a decade ago, but I do specifically remember that, and this is just a random thing, but I just remember laughing about it because I'm a person who does like art, but I know nothing about art. And I remember two people in the room had written down, they thought I worked in a gallery.
Wow.
I thought that was so random, but I've never forgotten it. And then I do remember several years ago, I was auditioning for a character. It was actually, what is that show called? Billions.
Okay, yeah.
So I was auditioning for the wife on that show. And I ended up having to redo, they asked me to redo the audition because I had done it initially and I was sort of forcing myself to seem rich. I mean, I don't exactly know how to put it because you're on camera, there's like no extra stuff, but they just said, I just remember my agent or my manager or somebody said, we'd like you to do this again and just do it completely casual, no air of sophistication or whatever it was I was trying to do. Just make it completely bare bones because you on camera in this outfit does all the work for you.
Wow.
And I just thought, oh, that was such a heavy lesson to learn because you just forget. And especially because that was a show, the writing on that show is brilliant. And I was really excited about this show and the chance to audition for it. So I think instead of trusting my instincts, maybe I just simply was trying too hard. And it wasn't a bad audition. It just wasn't great when they knew it could have been great, which is why they had me do it again and just be completely casual about it. And I mean, I remember looking at those videos side by side and it's the exact same language. It's the exact same setup. It's the same lighting. It's even the same outfit. And yet they were right. It's a completely different tone just because in one of them, I was trying to be this fancy thing. And in the other thing, I was just this fancy thing that was totally in her, it was just in her bones. So it was an interesting psychological exercise for me.
That's awesome though. You definitely give off the impression, I've met you a few times and you definitely have, I can see that artsy thing working in the gallery because like your fashion is just, it should be in a gallery. And you do give off that, just that regal kind of presence that you just seem so like calm and comfortable, but also elevated.
Oh,
so
thank
I get
you.
it.
My God, I'm going to get that on a t-shirt.
So the final question is kind of bringing it back to ancient Greece a little bit, just because ending it on a fun note. So Adventures in the Known World, like I said, it has allowed my players to create characters with certain skills and attributes based on things they've seen in the Xenoverse. For example, we have a Bacchae. You know what the Bacchaes are. You read the Bacchanalia.
Yes.
Who's also a bard. So this one likes acting and poetry and stuff. We also have a satyr, a goat person, who has a con artist type background. So that's been kind of fun for them to explore. But if you had the opportunity to play a character in the Xenoverse, specifically maybe a Greek mythological character or a certain skill in the Xenoverse that you'd want to play, what would you want to showcase?
Oh, there's so many that are so juicy. This is going to be gender bending, but I would say Cupid. I just think what a fun character to play. It just seems super fun to me. Or maybe one of the, like maybe Archangel Michael. Yeah, I just think those seem super fun.
That would be totally
I mean, I'm sure that by the end of the day, their backs were like, are you kidding me? But, just because those wings were really heavy. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think those would be fun. I mean, I would love, I mean, I got to play a Fury for 2 or 3 days, but I mean, I'd love the chance to play that for longer because those kind of characters are just having so much fun and just, manipulating everybody, which is, joyful under those circumstances. So that kind of thing would be amazing. I mean, but truthfully, the list is long. I mean, that was the great thing about the show is just the unending list of cool characters.
And we're definitely having fun getting to explore that. There was one thing I was just going to ask. Oh yeah, the gender bending thing, that's one thing that's been amazing about the whole Dungeons and Dragons experience for a lot of people is you are able to express different genders or lack of genders. And definitely, if you want to play a male and you're female, or you identify as something completely different, you have that ability to explore. Excuse me, I'm talking something deep here. Um, Explore different genders, different characters, different sexualities, different races, even. So that's been quite a cool thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just cool, I I mean, I've felt this way about forever. I've felt this way forever about this topic, that I think it's the beauty of literature. I think it's the beauty of so many films and characters. When people relate to them, it makes them more compassionate to another person's experience. So you can be having a complete shift in your perception just by putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So I can see how it could be a massive experience for someone, and also fun and interesting and all of that. But I just think it also has a bigger import than sometimes we give it credit for. That it's so incredibly valuable to understand experiences that are outside of your own.
Definitely. It was a great place to end it. Thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've kind of bestowed upon us. We've been rolling natural 20s all night on that one. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to not only see you soon at a convention or Z Night retreat or somewhere, but yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and good luck in the haunted house.
When I was a child, I walked around with my hand stretched to my side. And in the front seat, I spread my fingers out when I learned to drive. Well, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. Yeah, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. When I was alone, I watched them slip as they sliced into my skin. At that hospital, where the blood poured over my arms and the light shined in. Well, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. Yeah, I was waiting for your hand. I was waiting for you. I was overjoyed at the hope that you'd walk in at a red light. All the days that I did not know if I'd make it through the night. How lucky am I to be alive, to love you? How lucky am I to be alive, to love you? Let me go back and tell me I'll survive, and say someday you will find me. Let me go, let me go.